All right, so for today's video, what I was hoping to do was give you a bit of a recap. For those of you who have been attending our classes in the park, we have been covering this for the past couple weeks. For those of you who haven't been at the park, you haven't seen this yet, so this is going to be new for you. Basically, what I was trying to do, since we have to abide by the distancing rules, now that we can still, now that we can actually see each other, which is nice, we still have to abide by the distancing rules. So one of the things that I was toying with was the idea of ready stances, right? So you always hear different stances and other systems and whatnot, but I've never really taken the time to really dive into that for you guys, both on the YouTubes as well as in class. And I wanted to make sure I just made this as clear as I could. One, the first thing about stances is practice all of them. You're going to find things about one stance or another that you like more in certain applications, but I'm going to also borrow a line from Rick. You don't have, Guru Rick Fay out of NKG, you do not have the luxury of choice. You will find yourself in different positions depending upon what you have already done and depending upon what your opponent or multiple opponents has already done. So you don't get to choose. But you can definitely have your preferences. So I'm going to start off by showing the different stances here. As far as feet go, that's going to be entirely up to you. Right now I'm showing a abierta position or an open position with my hands and my left foot's forward. I can also do the same thing abierta with my right foot forward. Okay, so abierta being open. Next one we're going to cover will be serrata. Serrata is over to one side or the other, okay? When we do our serrata on one side, you can either chamber it on your shoulder or underneath your arm. A lot of times when I'm teaching people 7-6, we start with this way up in here in your armpit, right? That really kind of helps people have this sort of, this touch teacher, if you will. The touch actually helps teach the technique. Down the road, you want to break that. So your serrata ends up being more like this. So you have serrata low, serrata high on the right, serrata high, serrata low on the left. Then you have crosata, crosata meaning closed. I have crosata with a right on high and a left down low, or I have a crosata with a left on high and a right down low. So I'm closed. Again, either foot can be forward. Refer to the previous footwork videos in order to see how you can switch this in different patterns. So what I wanted to recap for you was something that I've been playing with quite a bit during the quarantine, is just basics. We're just running basics. What I'm going to have you do is I want you to start with your abierta position. Again, put whatever foot you want forward, okay? All I want you to do is run the X. This sounds simple because you've done this a million times, right? So you're going to slash and slash. So we're doing a forehand and a backhand, or an inward and a backhand. We're just running our X nice and slow. This is inward, backhand, from an abierta position. Then, from your abierta position, I want you to figure out how to swing a backhand inward X. So, if you bring it over here and start, you've essentially switched it to serrata. So what I want you to do is I want you to figure out how to bring it from here. I like to loop this umbrella backhand in and then hit my inward. Then hit an umbrella backhand and hit an inward. Umbrella backhand and hit an inward. Umbrella backhand and hit an inward. So that is one way of switching just a common X, right? So abierta position, forehand, backhand, or abierta position, backhand, forehand, forehand, okay? Same thing from serrata. I'm going to start on the right side. So from serrata, I can do my X, forehand and backhand. I can take my low hand, whip it through as a forehand and a backhand. Forehand, backhand, forehand, backhand. So this is coming up as if it's a roof block and I snap it through as an inward. Or this is coming up as an umbrella and I snap it through as an inward. Or this is coming up as a puño and I snap it through as an inward. Either way, I'm hitting the inward first. So this is inward and backhand, inward and backhand, inward and backhand, inward and backhand. Now we're going to do the opposite of that, backhand and inward. So I hit a backhand, so I chamber this over here like so with the umbrella backhand, backhand and inward, bring it back to the right side. Then backhand and inward. That one's pretty straightforward. Cut it out, cut it back down. Make sure you're cutting on the line, right? So this would be a boulon line here, or if I want to make this into an X, then this actually comes up and then down, and I make my X. Backhand and inward X, backhand and inward X, backhand and inward X, backhand and inward X. So that's serrata on the right. I'm going to show you serrata on the left, but I'm going to do it from the top side. I'm not going to be super monotonous and show you both top and bottom on both sides. That would be a bit excessive. So forehand and backhand, forehand and backhand, chambering. Forehand and backhand, forehand and backhand, chambering. Forehand and backhand, forehand and backhand. Forehand and backhand, forehand and backhand. Backhand and forehand, backhand and forehand. Backhand and forehand, backhand and forehand. Backhand, forehand, backhand, forehand. So it doesn't matter whether you're chambered up top or chambered down below, the motions are still the same. The only thing that will change is some of the motions, if you're chambered below, won't work. So obviously if I try and do an umbrella from under here, it's gonna be a lot tighter and a lot harder to do than if I do an umbrella from chambered high. So bear that in mind as well. Again, I have been spending a lot of time doing this during my shadowboxing time, during my Carenza time. I highly recommend you do too. It's fun to see how mixed up your brain can get on basics. Cross your arms here like so. We are now in a crosata position, okay? We're gonna start inward and backhand. I'm gonna use my right hand driver, my top hand drive. This is inward and backhand. Bring it back. I turn my whole body and I hit my inward and my backhand. If I just stay square, hitting my inward is going to be very difficult. I have to really draw it out and bring the shot. I could maybe make this happen, but this is a terrible position to find myself in. So what I have really enjoyed doing is I turn my body, opening the strike up and hitting the inward and then the backhand. Inward and backhand. Focus on the twist of the trunk as you do this. Inward and backhand, inward and backhand, inward and backhand, inward and backhand. So from the backhand and inward side, obviously this is all already closed, so my backhand and inward, 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 backhand and inward. That was pretty straightforward. Now if we go from the bottom side first, if I want to do my inward and backhand, I have to loop this through and hit my inward and my backhand, and then my inward and my backhand. It's the same thing, okay? So we've done backhand and inward, inward and backhand. We've done the X, okay? We've done the X on a starting position from abierta, again, depending upon whichever foot you want to choose. Serrata, high and low on both sides, and crosata on both sides. The next thing I wanted you to add to this was high, low, and high. So that's usually what we call it, is high, low, and high. It's loptic, snap, snap, or loptic, wittic, wittic. Usually we take this first loptic high, and then we do a low shot and a high shot. A high line, a low shot, and a high shot. If you've seen the walking drill videos, you have seen this high, low, and high. If you've seen anything regarding progressive indirect attack, you've seen this sort of high, low, high motion. So we're going to start the same sort of progression. We're in our abierta position. I hit a high line, a low, and a high. A high line, a low, and a high. So again, I'm hitting with a forehand first. Now, from here, I'm going to take this and I'm going to work the backhand first. So now the high line is still a loptic all the way through, and I still need to snap these next two shots by snapping inward and I snap an inward. I loop the backhand across, snap an inward, snap an inward. Loop the backhand, snap an inward, snap an inward, loop the backhand, snap an inward, snap an inward. So that is our high, low, high, both backhand driven as well as forehand driven. High, low, high, high, low, high, high, low, high, high, low, and high. That is from the abierta position. Same thing from serrata. So from serrata position, I can hit a forehand high, low, and high, and a forehand high, low, and high. Or from this position here, with this one, I loop the backhand in, inward and inward, or I just take this quick shot right here, back in through, inward and inward. So I can loop the back in, inward and inward, or I can just slash the back in, inward and inward. I can also just cut this through as the high, then the low and the high. And then if I'm in serrata position, I have to loop this through, high, low, and high. Obviously, I should have mentioned this before in the X. Anytime you're in serrata, it's a good idea to mix the two. So you have the forehand high, low, and high, low, and high. I have the backhand high, low, and high. Backhand, low, and high. Backhand, low, and high. And then I have the mixtures of the two. So I have high, low, high, starting with the forehand, high, low, high, starting with the backhand, high, low, high, starting with the backhand, high, low, and high, starting with the forehand. So wrapping this portion up, we're going to go right into our crissata position. So from crissata, we can hit our inward, our backhand, and our backhand. Our inward, our backhand, and our backhand. Inward, backhand, and backhand. Inward, backhand, and backhand. If this one still feels funny to you, what really helped me was thinking of I have to follow the force. I don't want to meet the force at all. So I loop this and follow that angle 1 coming at my head. I follow behind it. And then I hit a backhand and a backhand. Loop it and follow behind it. Backhand and backhand. If I want to meet the force, when I want to do this, let's again picture an angle 1. So I meet the shot here, inward and inward. Meet that shot there, inward and inward. All the way through. All the way through. And again, if I want to follow the force off this left hand, that'll still work. And then I hit here and I hit here. It's really only limited to your imagination. So again, I understand this framework today was a very basic one. This is what we warmed up with in our part classes. We did a lot of cob work with this as well, as far as starting from different positions. I just wanted you to see what you're missing out if you aren't making it to the park. But also I just wanted to kind of help engage you guys in this while you're doing your home studies, because again, this has been an invaluable home study for me. So thank you very much.